You might be thinking week one did not go as planned as you had thought it was going to be. Well, I'm here to tell you that it's going to get better. Last year, there's a lot of different players that had a fantastic first week and faded out towards the end. So don't freak out, don't panic. So what we're going to do today, we're going to talk about those wide receivers and tight ends that you should start and sit. And obviously, there's obviously some key factors and injuries that can help you with this coming week for starting and sitting the right players. All right, so the week two matchup for Calvin Ridley going against the Dallas Cowboys and Atlanta Falcons is a super must start for this week. He had 8 receptions, 130 yards, and 2 touchdowns. They played the Seattle Seahawks in week one. Wasn't a great matchup overall for the team, but he obviously put up the points that was necessary because he was targeted 12 times, tied for the most on the team with Julio Jones. So obviously with this high-powered offense for the Atlanta Falcons, they're going to get their targets. Matt Ryan has always been one of those quarterbacks that's always been a throw first. Even in the offenses in the past, it's never been a running team too much. So with Calvin Ridley getting those 12 targets, he is going to want to be your starter for this coming week, especially when Dallas allowed Robert Woods to have 105 yards in week one from the LA Rams. So having this many weapons on this team, and including with their new addition of Todd Gurley, will also free up some time with the defense. One of Matt Ryan's favorite targets to go to is Calvin Ridley. So obviously, more targets, more opportunities, he can get that going. So Calvin Ridley starter week two. All right, another familiar face, Allen Lazard. I had him on my week one starting list. So to see him here again just kind of proves that with him, there is an opportunity for him to be our number 2 receiver on the Green Bay Packers. Obviously with Devontae Adams is without a doubt. He had an awesome game, but Allen Lazard obviously helped him with that to be able to free him up. He seems to a lot of the plays were designed in his favor, including some running plays, because he had 4 receptions for 63 yards. He had 1 touchdown, but I know it doesn't sound very much, but 19 yards rushing just kind of shows that they're trying to get him some different ways, different looks, trying to get him the ball to make plays. They're facing the Detroit Lions gave up 3 passing touchdowns to Mitchell Trubisky in week 1, so that's obviously they need to be able to get Allen Lazard the ball, and he will have another big week in week 2, being the number 2 receiver behind Devontae Adams. All right, Robbie Anderson on my list as another starter for this week. He had 6 receptions, 144 yards, and 1 touchdown in his week 1 matchup against the Oakland Raiders. He is the number 1 receiver on this Carolina Panthers team. They're going against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. As I said before, they're really bad at pass defense. Even in week 1, they did not look anything like a good serviceable defense. Did not really help out their offense as well. He did play for the Jets and was targeted over 90 times in 3 straight seasons. So Sam Darnold, when he was there, trusted Mr. Robbie Anderson. And I'm sure he's going to get that same trust from his best quarterback that they have on their team to be able to get those same amount of targets for the Carolina Panthers. So this is a great matchup for Robbie Anderson, potentially probably a career-changing and also to a really season high for him. So Mr. Robbie Anderson is your week 2 starter. All right, John Brown. I was a little hesitant when I saw him do so well in the past week. Basically, he is not a wide receiver that I kind of trust as far as going to be there week to week. Early in his career, he was hurt quite a bit. But I like this matchup against the Miami Dolphins. Stephon Diggs obviously takes a lot of the pressure off of John Brown. So John Brown is one of those blazing speeds, can run down the field. And obviously with the quarterback of Josh Allen, who has a cannon of an arm, is someone you're going to want to start in week 2. He was targeted 10 times in the week 1. So Josh Allen does like him as his receiver. He did have 6 receptions for 70 yards and 1 touchdown. He was a leading receiver for the Bills in 2019. So with Stephon Diggs coming in there, obviously the targets and the receptions are going to go down with the stats. But I also think it might actually help him a little bit, maybe get open a little bit more, because Stephon Diggs takes away a lot of pressure and usually is tracked by the number 1 corner on that team. So I would start John Brown this week, especially against the Miami Dolphins defense, who have a really, really bad defense. So this is your time to put in the right player, and John Brown is your man. All right, week 2 is Mr. Mike Evans. I hate to say sit this man just because of who he is. Mike Evans was not 100% in his first week against the New Orleans Saints. He came in the game with a hamstring injury, so I expect him not to really be in 100% just yet, but he is someone you're going to want to start in the future until he gets to that 100% mark. He needs more time with Brady as well to kind of get in sync, get that timing down. I really feel the preseason, as much as everybody hates the preseason, it really helps with timing and really get people up to speed. So I think it's just going to take a little bit of time for him to get his rhythm back and connecting with Tom Brady, because obviously Mike Evans was coming in the league. He was with Jameis Winston for a few years, so they kind of had that chemistry. So Tom Brady's going to take some time. Tom Brady is 43 years old, so obviously he doesn't need too much time to kind of figure out how Mike Evans works, and especially with the skill of Mike Evans. You throw the ball up, he's going to go get it. Week 1, he only had 1 reception for 2 yards. He did have a touchdown, but obviously that's not anything to brag about. He was targeted only 4 times. He was a shell of himself. So I'd say, reading reports, he's about probably 75-80% healthy. But week 2, I would not have him in your starting lineup if you can avoid it. All right, so DK Metcalf, the Seattle Seahawks wide receiver. They're going against the New England Patriots this week. This is probably one of my favorite matchups to see kind of where DK Metcalf is. Coming out of Ole Miss, being a second-round pick, he had a lot to prove to kind of show that he was definitely a first-round grade and should have been taken in the first round. Metcalf is an up-and-coming receiver, and he's going against one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL with Stephen Gilmore. Stephen Gilmore obviously won Defensive Player of the Year last year. So to see the development of DK Metcalf and kind of find out where he is in transition will definitely be huge. He did have 4 receptions, 95 yards, and a touchdown against the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons do not have a great pass defense, so his numbers may be a little skewed a little bit, but DK Metcalf in general is a very good receiver. So going against the New England Patriots, this is going to show us kind of where he's at in his development in his second year. But this week, he is definitely a sit just because of who he's going against, and Stephen Gilmore will be tracking this man. All right, Jamison Crowder from the New York Jets going against the San Francisco 49ers. The Jets did play the Bills in week 1, so it's kind of surprising the stats he was able to put up, especially with the Bills being such a great defense and having also a good cornerback. He had 7 receptions, 115 yards, only a touchdown. 49ers are a great passing defense, especially with Richard Sherman patrolling the area. It was his first receiving game of 100 yards or more since 2017, so the type of stats he puts up week to week is not typical. He was targeted 13 times, so Sam Darnold kind of developed that trust with him. So I would probably see more targets going his way, but as far as keeping that consistency with the 100 yards a game, I don't see that very often. For him to get that again, and his inconsistent play just kind of makes me hesitant, especially going against the 49ers, who are probably upset because the week 1 matchup, they kind of got handled by the Arizona Cardinals. So I would expect the 49ers to be a little bit more motivated, and I would put Jamison Crowder as a sit in week 2. All right, Will Fuller from the Houston Texans. They played the Kansas City Chiefs in week 1. I wouldn't say that numbers were skewed. The Houston Texans offense did not look anything like it has in years past. He did have 8 receptions, 112 yards, and 0 touchdowns. He did have sometimes he put up those numbers last year, but then there would be games where he was off and did not have any receptions anywhere close to what he put up in week 1. All attention is on Will Fuller right now, mainly because obviously he's the number 1 receiver. They do have Brandon Cooks that came in and Randall Cobb, but I don't really feel that they're the number 1 receivers, and defenses are not going to really take them too seriously. Obviously, they're not going to take him too lightly either, but Will Fuller is someone I would probably sit down. Ravens do have obviously a good defense that they're playing against in this coming week. He was targeted 10 times in week 1, so Deshaun Watson has developed that chemistry with him, has that trust. But if the Baltimore Ravens are able to get Deshaun Watson, it's going to affect Will Fuller with the stats this coming week. I would sit Will Fuller this week just mainly because of who they're playing, the Baltimore Ravens, this coming week. All right, but certainly last but certainly not least is our tight end position. Mr. Mark Andrews from the Baltimore Ravens going against the Houston Texans. Last year, he was able to put up 4 receptions for 75 yards, and he did have a touchdown last year. So that's obviously a positive sign that he can kind of figure out the defense that they're going to play. He was tied with the most targets in week 1 with 6 with Marquise Brown. So obviously that's someone that Lamar Jackson likes to throw the ball to. It was a blowout the first week of the season for the Baltimore Ravens playing against the Cleveland Browns. So he probably didn't get as many targets or opportunities just mainly because of that. But there was 2 touchdowns and 5 receptions and 58 yards he had in week 1 against those Browns. And like I said, Lamar Jackson is looking for this man to get him the ball to make the plays. He's starting to turn into one of the more premier tight ends in the NFL, kind of towards the Travis Kelce's, the George Kittles. So opportunity for him to really shine is this coming week against the Houston Texans. All right, Tyler Higbee from the LA Rams. They're playing the Eagles this week. Didn't get too much last week in terms of opportunity, but going against the Eagles defense that allowed Logan Thomas to have a decent game last week. Logan Thomas, he was able to get 4 catches and 37 yards and a touchdown. So the Eagles obviously might not be looking so much at the tight end position and may have a weakness in there. Eagles defense was good last year against the tight end. They did lose some starters, so that is going to be a big factor for Tyler Higbee in order to get a huge game in this coming week in week 2. The LA Rams are a high-powered offense, as people have seen in the past, so I expect them to expand on Tyler Higbee's ability to be able to make more plays and get more opportunities in this offense. All right, Mr. Jonas Smith from the Tennessee Titans. They're going against the Jacksonville Jaguars. This was one of my wild card picks. I have a wild card pick every single week, but this is my wild card pick. He'd be a nice replacement for some injuries. George Kittle, that's going to miss in week 2, would be a nice spot starter for you if you have that ability. Or he could be a nice little flex if you don't have anybody else that's out there. He could be a nice flex opportunity to be able to get you some big numbers, especially for him. He got 4 catches, 36 yards, and a touchdown, just to kind of give you those extra points. Because obviously, going depth inside of wide receiver, trying to figure it out, this could be a good opportunity to throw him in there. He was tied for second in targets with 7. Offense really relies on Derrick Henry. So Derrick Henry is the engine that goes. So if he's doing well in this offense, the rest of the offense is going to kind of come together. So I would put Jonas Smith as your starter, as far as if you have a George Kittle that got hurt or a flex option is where I would put him. All right, so my first week 2 sit for a tight end, Logan Thomas. We just talked about him a little bit ago. He did have a good game going against the Philadelphia Eagles, but I'm not going to try to tell everybody get on the hype train with him. Logan Thomas, unfortunately, was a quarterback when he came into the league. He did do a position change. He's only had 354 yards in career receiving. So he is still kind of maybe learning the position. So, and obviously with the Washington football team, they don't necessarily have a go-to quarterback right now as far as Dwayne Haskins. Dwayne Haskins is still trying to come himself. He's in his second year. The Cardinals are an improved defense, trying to cover up the tight end because that was a huge weakness last year for them. Logan Thomas last week, like I mentioned before, had 4 catches, 37 yards, and a touchdown. I don't expect him to have that same results this coming week, just mainly because I don't feel that he is consistent enough to get those kind of numbers, because that was probably, if not the best game he's probably had in his entire career. So do not hype on the hype train just yet with Mr. Logan Thomas. It's not worth the time just yet. All right, my last sit would be Noah Fant going against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Denver Broncos tight end is going against a defense that dominated last week on the football. So I would hesitate in putting him in. I mean, he is one of the better tight ends in the NFL. He did have a very good game. 5 catches, 81 yards, and a touchdown in his week 1 matchup. But I'm going to just let you know, I don't think that's a good sign for him as far as a matchup-wise for him. Because the Pittsburgh Steelers had Evan Ingram in check last week. He only had 2 catches and 9 yards. And to me, Noah Fant is a good, like I said, a good tight end, going to make big plays. It's just the matchup-wise, I don't feel the Steelers are a good one for him. The Steelers are one of the better defenses, and they proved that last week when they played the Giants. So hold off on Noah Fant and starting him this week, as he will probably not have a good game going against this really, really stingy defense of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Thanks, guys, so much for tuning in for the wide receiver and tight end position. Please subscribe to the YouTube. Leave some comments in there. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram for Wise Sports News. Otherwise, I'll catch you next week on week 3. Hopefully this week's matchups are a lot better for the overall NFL, because 2020, as I've said before, you just don't know what to expect, and week 1 just definitely proved that point. So otherwise, take care of everybody else. I'll see you next week.